Alright, so I kind of want to talk a little bit about some stuff. Mine as well. And, I want to talk about how, in many ways, society is becoming more utilitarian and more rational and I would say more rational, more utilitarian, and just more pragmatic overall. Now, you could say, for us older folks, me, I'm in my 30s, so, for me, I kind of get a little bit of the tinge of the nostalgia and kind of wanting to hold on to old traditions just, for tradition's sake and, because of, memories and nostalgia and all that. But we've kind of come to an age where you gotta let that shit go. I mean, look at this, smoking cigarettes. It's an old tradition, but I mean, does it really serve you much? I mean, don't get me wrong, like, it's definitely good to, kind of help get your mind off of shit and everything. But we're kind of moving away from the days of, like, where you did shit, just to fit in or just because, this is what the cool kids do, right? Like, now doing things just because that's what the cool kids do, that's not, like, you look like a fucking idiot now. And I mean, for better or worse, I mean, I think it is, in a way, the utilitarianism makes a society sort of drab and unappealing over time because it does get monotonous. If you think of, I think there's this kind of saying where, what makes the French language or the Arabic language or, the Hebrew language, these languages, so beautiful or romantic or whatever, is because of their inconsistencies and just being way more complicated than they need to be. And that's what makes them so appealing, I guess, to the masses. But we've come to an age where utilitarianism is sort of the norm. Everything is sort of been broken down into its, I guess you could say, minutia. When you look at, modern, like you look at social media and how people interpret psychological things, you'll say, people don't just do these things because they're traditions or, because it's just the way society works. No, there's sort of this evolutionary psychological aspect to it. Or there's this sort of esoteric, symbolism behind everything in this fractal universe or whatever. And even with religion, you see that people are turning to, these things such as, magic, sorcery, manifestation. There's nothing wrong with it, but, it works because of its utilitarian benefit. You could even say that nowadays, because of just the availability of, kind of this, called dark psychology or inverse psychology or, kind of focusing on narcissism, we see that whatever displays of emotion or whatever seemingly irrational behaviors that we have some kind of rational explanation behind it. And therefore some kind of amnesty to it. It's not just, well, this person's crazy or, they're just a fucking evil piece of shit. No, there's kind of this, train of logic behind it. Aside from that, then, either that or it's a coping mechanism. It's some kind of coping mechanism with the intention of achieving some kind of utilitarian benefit, some material benefit. So, for instance, if you have a hobby outside of whatever you're normally pursuing as a goal in life, there's some kind of, psychological, like, trying to rewire your mind. Well, if I get my mind off of it and just kind of let it, happen or manifest, then, therefore, you could, just saying, you could, therefore, be able to kind of, do this little mind tricks on yourself along with doing mind tricks on people. It's like, well, if I have these, sort of trivial hobbies that I honestly don't really give a fuck about, and I convince myself to actually enjoy these hobbies and to be genuinely addicted to them, then, I'll seem like some kind of, well-rounded, philosophical guy that is pursuing the higher things in life. And it's ultimately kind of the older generations, particularly, these older, more judgmental people, put it that way, that a lot of us are just kind of hanging on to these traditions because, it's like, well, the older people, they're in charge and they kind of run everything in this society and they have all the money and power. So, yeah, we're just going to hold on to these traditions for the sake of, just fucking holding on so we can please them, if you will. And, there's a bit of utilitarianism to it. Because of, social media and everything being explained. It's like every concept out there has some kind of, super long-winded, deep, or, some kind of deep philosophical, metaphysical explanation, which, there's these levels of correspondence, or, if you want to do it by that method, or there's some kind of, scientific rationale and list of reasons for why we do the things we do. And even this most seemingly, batshit crazy or just buffoonery, there's a purpose to it. And sort of, we've come to this sort of age of forgiveness and amnesty. Well, not so much forgiveness, but, it's like, look, you do what you gotta do. You have your reasons for what you do. And that's that. Right? There's no more, well, this guy's a piece of shit. He deserves to burn in hell. Yada, yada, yada. It's just, hey, it's kind of where the chips landed, and that's it. And so what you're seeing is a lot of these, older people kind of just, they're falling off. They're getting older. They're dying. I mean, what else can you say? They're passing away, I should say. They're unaliving. I might just have to re-record this whole thing. I'm not actually doing that shit. Fuck that. If I don't get any views at all, or if this video gets taken down, I guess these overlords or whoever they think they are, they can just go fucking, I guess, not get ad revenue from this, and they can go fucking open their legs and take it up their vaginas, and they'll pay for things that way. And I guess it's a good little way to segue into the next topic of, I guess, or they're assholes. Which, I mean, even then, there's sort of this pragmatism to being gay. It's like, there's sort of this pragmatic explanation, reasoning to everything that people do, to where we become a very low-trust society. For better or worse. And so, the only way to adapt is really kind of being this, you're just gonna have to disregard all these, old traditions, because that's how the way things are done, and that's how the way things are supposed to be, and that's what's good and right. And if you do these other things, then you're bad and you're evil, and you deserve the worst punishments. You kind of have to be willing to let that all go. Just like, hey, you know what? I know that I live in this society that's kind of run by these, older generations, and these, kind of irrational, or I think they kind of held on to the irrationalism. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think it's the, I believe, and it is the irrationalism and sort of the lack of coherence to anything that's artistic or beautiful. It is what makes it special. I'll give you an example. When I was younger, I got